guys, today I'm going to be talking about the psychic medium Kelvin Cruickshank. If you don't know, which you probably won't if you're not from New Zealand, Kelvin Cruickshank is a psychic who is well known for his work on the TV show Sensing Murder, which is where they would use psychics to try and find further information about cold cases. Basically, as he likes to say, he sees dead people. Yeah, that's kind of the best way to explain it. So just a couple days ago on Saturday, with a friend of mine, I went to see his live show called Soul Food. He travels around New Zealand doing these live shows, so it's just, you know, big audience. He does readings for as many people as he can and just talks about what he knows about spirit, and it's kind of a comforting thing for anyone who's lost someone. In preparation for that, I spent a lot of this month reading Kelvin Cruickshank's books. He has 5 books. He's actually just released a 6th book. So these are the first 4. I had read the 5th one previously. The 5th one is called Taking the Journey, and it's mostly about Kelvin's views of the afterlife and what happens when we die. They were all co-written with someone else. I think that's fair enough. He isn't a writer, you know, he's not an author. He was a chef before he was a psychic full-time. But throughout most of these books you can totally hear his voice. If you've heard him speak before, if you look him up on YouTube, there's a couple videos that he's in. Or if you've seen Sensing Murder, he has a very like typical kiwi bloke kind of way of talking, and that really does come through. So they've kept his voice in it, which is good. So all of the books are slightly different, they just have a slightly different focus. I'll just give you a brief rundown about all of them and what I thought of them before I go into talking about the live show. The first one is Walking in the Light, and this is pretty much just Kelvin's autobiography. This was my favourite book out of all of them. It was great. It's actually probably the best autobiography that I've ever read. Even if you take all of the psychic medium stuff out of the story, Kelvin still had a very interesting life. This is actually just a really compelling story, and it almost read to me like a novel rather than an autobiography. Like, it's got that much of a story to it, like the story arc kind of, that it was a really entertaining read. I love Kelvin's personality, and it really comes through in this book especially. He talks about his life from childhood to the present day. He talks about accepting the gift that he has. Kelvin grew up in and around Hamilton, which is where I'm from, so it was really nice hearing about locations and different like restaurants and bars and schools and stuff that I'm familiar with. I haven't really read a book set around that area, so that was really nice. He comes across as a really genuine, positive person. He's been through a lot and come out with a really positive outlook. So definitely, even if you don't know who Kelvin Cruickshank is, I totally recommend this book. It's a really interesting read, especially if you're into psychic mediums and stuff, but even if you just like a really good autobiography, it's really good. Highly recommend this one. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. The second book is Bridging the Gap, which is basically just a whole bunch of anecdotes from different readings that Kelvin has done, all from his live shows. This left me in tears a lot of time, but then laughing a lot of time. Kelvin tends to do that. He has this balance between dealing with that sadness that you get when someone passes away, and there are a lot of really tragic stories in this book, but also there's a lot of humour as well. This one I gave 3 stars. The next one is an interesting one. It wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. It's called Finding the Path. Awaken Your Connection to Spirit. With the blurb and stuff, sounds like it's about developing your own psychic gifts and your own communication with spirit. So I was kind of expecting a lot, and actually it's mostly just a whole lot about meditation. So all of the advice he gives about connecting with spirit is to meditate, which I can't say whether or not that works because meditating is not something that appeals to me. I'm probably never going to do it, to be honest. And it is nice if you think about it, not so much literally as being able to see dead people and talk to ghosts. If you're dealing with having lost someone or whatever, to like sit there and talk to them in your mind, because you always have them in your heart and blah blah blah. So that is a nice idea. But the thing I really liked about this book is that it's also about knowing yourself and finding yourself and that kind of thing. And he has some really good advice about that. If you're in a difficult place in your life, if you're not feeling very positive and you need some guidance, I highly recommend this book. It was fantastic for that. There are so many little snippets of wisdom in here that I think are really amazing and positive. He has a really great way of looking at life. And thinking about the sort of place I was in mentally like a year or so ago, a couple years ago, this would have been really helpful to me at that time. It's just that reading it now, I'm in such a good place that I didn't really need those words, but it was really good, and I love his outlook on everything, so I gave this one 3 stars as well. Final book of his that I read this month was Inside the Medium. This one's kind of hard to pinpoint what it really is. It's kind of more about his life now and facing skepticism. There's a lot about facing skepticism in here. This one was co-written by someone else, and I ever so slightly did not like it as much because of that. I feel like she didn't get across Kelvin's voice in the same way. It came across very, very negative as compared to the other books, which is so positive and so uplifting. This one was a bit of a downer. It's all just how he feels and stuff, but yeah, it didn't come across with the positive spin that I got used to from Kelvin in the other books. So I think it was just how the co-writer put across his voice. This one is kind of a mishmash of all of them. Like I said, it's more about his life in the present day, but it's got anecdotes from readings, it's got stuff about his life and his children. There's something I really enjoyed was his son's like written a passage about what it's like to have Kelvin as his dad, so that was a nice inclusion. There's a few passages from his friends, and yeah, but I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. Like I said, he does have a 6th book out now, but it's a book of affirmations, so like inspiring words that you'd chant to yourself while you're meditating or something. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check that out. Probably not something that I will read. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this, I'm not sure if he was supposed to say it, but he did, so I'm going to share it with you guys. He mentioned that they're quite possibly working on a new season of Sensing Murder right now, so that's super exciting if you love that show like I do. They're playing reruns on TV in New Zealand at the moment. Yeah, apparently they're working on a new season, so that's exciting. The show, it was super long. It went for like 3 hours, I think. He kind of started by explaining who he was and what he did. Some of the readings that he did were kind of vague, so he'd say like the letter J or the letter M is really significant, and he'd be like, what does that mean? And the person would sit there and try and think of like why that would be significant to the person that's passed away. And he'd do that with numbers as well, like, oh, this person's giving me the number 3, does that mean anything to you? But I mean, who knows, maybe that's all the spirit was giving him. A lot of times people would be like, yeah, that letter is significant, it means a lot because of blah blah blah, so they would have a reason. But I kind of think you can find a link if you really want to, you know, with things like letters and numbers. He would describe the people quite accurately, so that their family would be sitting there going, yes, yes, that's exactly what he or she was like. And I think that's pretty significant because there are so many different people out there in the world, you can't really just guess such specific personality traits. So he did well with that, with describing people. Also relaying the message, so there were occasions when he'd just say, okay, this person just wants to tell you that they love you and they miss you and blah blah blah. Sometimes though he would have a different message. It would be something like they want to say that they're sorry for that thing they did, or you know, they forgive you or whatever, and the person always, the living person that is, would always be like in tears, and they'd say, yes, yes, I know exactly what they're referring to and I'm so glad, I really needed to hear that, blah blah blah. So it seemed like the messages he was getting were accurate. There were a few people he spoke to that he had like super accurate details for. There was this one lady that her best friend had passed away, and Kelvin was talking about how she was talking about hedgehogs, and he's like, what does that even mean? She's saying hedgehogs and I don't really understand, and this woman was just like, oh my god, no one knows that except me and her. So there were things like that that he was really specific about that were really impressive. It had the whole audience laughing at times because there were those weird references like hedgehogs, and you know, it's pretty hilarious. And then crying at other times, because when you kind of realize that it is that person and they're there, everyone in the room was crying. So it was really uplifting. It was all super positive, and I think everyone walked out of it feeling really, really good. I didn't get spoken to, my friend didn't get spoken to, so who really knows? The skeptic in the back of my mind is still saying the people he was real accurate with could have been actors, you know, they could have been planted there, and everything else was a little bit vague, so that could have just been good luck guessing. But I like to think that New Zealand, we're small enough that if that was the case, if he had like 4 or 5 people with every show that he did planted, I'd like to think that someone would talk about that and someone would know that that was something that was going on, and it would be a big rumour, and that isn't a thing. It was a really nice evening. Whether it was real or not, who knows, but I think Kelvin does a really good job of making people feel better and making them feel comforted. I'm still kind of on the fence. I'm the sort of person where unless he had talked to me specifically and given me information that was accurate, I'm never going to believe it completely, you know. I need proof. I'm glad I went. It makes me want to go to more psychic shows for sure. It was really interesting. So yeah, I just find the whole thing very curious. I definitely recommend going to the shows if you are interested in that kind of thing. Kelvin's a really lovely guy, and like I said, completely recommend this book. If you have any interest whatsoever, I definitely recommend picking it up and reading it, because it was really, really good. So that's it for this video for now. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.